I'm sitting here in my off-grid cabin that's under construction, thinking about the "you will own nothing and be happy" statement of the WEF. I'm Justin Hitt with Sustainable Wealth Secrets. See, very wealthy people actually don't own anything. Now, I know you see them fly around in planes, and you hear about the mansions they own, and you hear about all the wealth and the access and the trappings of what we believe to be success and wealth. Yet wealth itself has very little long-term value or very little long-term staying power if you don't have systems in place to keep those assets. Now, I talk specifically about the off-grid cabin here because many wealthy individuals I know, or I have researched, or I've read their biographies, don't tend to own their mansions and large houses that they have. Now, you may not be aware, but many of those folks who buy these 24,000 square foot houses, who are truly wealthy, who are not under some delusion of wealth, they actually don't live in their houses full time because they're traveling and they're visiting different places. They may even have multiple homes. And there are companies who will manage these homes and make the homes available for movies. They'll make them available for vacation rental. They'll make them available for other things. There's actually a large house in this area. It's a historical mansion, used to be owned by a governor, and it has a caretaker that lives there full time. But the actual family who owns the property does not live at that property full time. In fact, they live in a different country, and they rent the estate house out for weddings, for conferences, for corporate events. And the house itself is a form of cash flow because it is an asset. It's not a liability. If you lived in the house all the time, it would be a liability. Because you'd be putting money out rather than money coming in. There's a reason the rich keep getting richer. Because they don't own anything, and all the things that they own, money keeps coming in. Now, they may not own it, but they definitely do control it. There's two different aspects here. But let's get back to the off-grid cabin. Why am I sitting here in an off-grid cabin that's under construction, other than the fact it's starting to get cold outside and I'm just chilling out to do a podcast? Well, it's because what I found right now, when the economy gets bad, or when someone is starting up a new project, they very often downsize so far that they could be in an apartment, or they could be in a hotel room, or they can be somewhere where they have very little to worry about other than the projects at hand. Elon Musk is an example. He even went as far as to sleep on other people's couches after the PayPal sale, and he had millions and millions of dollars. But this is also during the time where he was investing in Tesla and staging ideas such as SpaceX. There's writers, they're famous writers who get millions of dollars a year in income who will just rent a cabin out in the woods, or they'll rent a hotel room and they'll stay there for months at a time. Many individuals such as, even Donald Trump, the building that he lives in New York City is actually paid for by tenants in the building or by others who've paid for the building in the past. Mar-a-Lago that he owns is actually available to the general public to go have dinner there or to go play the golf course. Again, these are assets that they control, but they don't necessarily fully own them. Why would you want to own a $23 million house? And I'm thinking about celebrities and such. Why would you want to own a $23 million house and have to pay all the bills yourself? Truly wealthy people will find ways for other people to pay those bills. Now, you will have nothing and you'll be happy. Many wealthy individuals have their assets inside of corporations, inside of trusts, inside of family offices, inside of other structures, and they're very happy because someone else maintains all the day-to-day operations of that property. Now, a lot of folks live in big mansions and they live in nice houses. A lot of high-income professionals feel that they've invested by buying a home, but if you really look down from a profit and loss perspective, owning that home is a liability, where if they were renting a home of equivalent size or even downsized a bit and lived in something that was more modest, that their net cash flow would be much stronger. Now, I understand why you might want to buy a home near a good school district or within a country club or within a social environment. But again, the concept of owning nothing and being happy is not necessarily, actually, if it's imposed upon you, and you have to rent everything, that's not so good. But if it's something that you willfully choose to do because you're focusing on positive net cash flow, you're focusing on assets that cash flow, you're focusing on accumulating wealth, and you're focusing on leveraging the value of the income you have to create more income, then you're actually in a positive position. So this off-grid cabin we have here, I'm a publisher, and sometimes I'll change my whole lifestyle, or I'll try something that I've seen work for other people, and then I'll just give it a try for myself and see how well it works or doesn't work. I'm my own guinea pig. And so what I've done is I'm selling all of my assets, or so-called assets, which would be the home I live in, a bunch of rental properties. And I'll tell you why I'm selling the rental properties is because I'm having trouble in this region to get consistent contractors. And then also during the lockdown, during COVID, all that talk about not being able to evict tenants and then rent controls and other things, it has me concerned about the upward mobility of a rental property as far as being able to produce equity in that property and as the ability to buy additional properties in a market where there's 7 to 8% interest for mortgages. And so by liquidating the very few rental properties that I have, as well as my home, my primary residence, and downsizing tremendously, it then gives me the opportunity to travel for business or for pleasure in order to just basically bank the cash flow. So my out-of-pocket liabilities, let's say it's X, after everything is liquidated, I could be at 1/5 of X or 1/10 of X as far as my monthly out-of-pocket needs. Now, obviously, if I'm traveling a lot, I'm staying in hotels or staying in the travel trailer or staying at an Airbnb or staying at a campground. These are things that I find interesting because of 10 years of working for a Fortune 100 financial services firm and running the publishing business and doing consulting and doing all those other things that I was doing. I really didn't get much of vacation. I didn't really get much of downtime. And so as far as organizing my historical writing, having less actually gives me more lifestyle. Now, in the case of economic distress, having less reduces my footprint when it comes to liabilities, as well as makes me more mobile should I need to move to another country, to another state, to another place in the community that I'm in because I find a better opportunity. I have a smaller footprint this way. Now, this is my situation. It works well for me. It's not necessarily the situation that's going to be best for you. You may feel more comfortable owning a good home in a nice neighborhood. You may feel more comfortable owning a van that you sleep in. It's really up to you. There are extremes in this, but understand truly wealthy people with multiple $1,000,000 liquid net worths, they do not own their house. And if they do, the house value or cost to operate is significantly lower in terms of ratio that from income to expense as it would be for a general run-of-the-mill middle-class person. So, for example, a middle-class person might have a $3,000 a month cost of ownership for a house and a $300,000 a year income, where a wealthy individual might have a $5,000 a month cost of operation for their property and then a $600,000 a year or $700,000 or $800,000 a year plus residual income and be really far beyond the overall income. They also might have tax breaks in the house. I knew a heart surgeon who actually had a home office in the house, beautiful house. He had a painting studio. He had a nice garage. He had a very nice office and receiving area. And because of the way his job is designed, he was seeing clients and vendors at the house, and that gave him a significant tax deduction. But even then, it actually wasn't that big of a place. He was using it for, so we had a little auditorium upstairs that probably sat 10 people, and he would use that for conference calls. And so he might have a few people in the space there, and then he would have video conferences and presentations for his teaching activities. And then he had a nice office up front, and then an office for his secretary that was there. And then he had a receiving area because a lot of the heart surgeries he did, he wanted to do consultations in a friendlier environment because he traveled between hospitals. Long story short, there are practical benefits, but there are very few extremely wealthy people or people that have gotten to millions and multi-millions of dollars in personal wealth who actually own their homes. They might even rent their homes from a holding company that also holds other properties and has third parties investors paying the bill. Again, you don't get wealthy spending your own money. You don't get wealthy owning things that have liability, and you don't get wealthy by making decisions like everybody else. You've been programmed to do the typical thing, which is to buy a house that's big enough to impress your neighbors and small enough you can afford it. Banks are more than willing to shackle you with debt. And ultimately, you get into a situation where becoming wealthy is nearly impossible. Now, when I advise clients, we do talk about things that can seem like an extreme. Me selling everything I have to do what I've called the nomadic caretaker and to go into agriculture and to really embrace some of my hobbies is unusual for somebody who's not 100 years old. You know, I'm not retired. I'm not retiring. So what I'm doing is unusual, but it's perfect for what I want to do. So when I'm working with private clients, we're going to lay out good, better, and best. We're going to lay out some of the opportunities. We're going to look at the cash flow on a per asset value. We're going to look at liabilities and how do we convert those liabilities. But very often I'll say something like, why do you even own your house? So I was working with a client who does a lot of business travel. They have their spouse usually goes with them on travel when it's like a nicer location. But otherwise, they can have 10 to 15 days a month where nobody's actually in the house. Like the house, they have to hire a house sitter and they have pets and they've got to have a babysitter come in to watch their house because only 15 days a month are they actually in their house. And I said to him, why do you even have a house? You know, and today, actually, this was a client from a while back, but today they could probably Airbnb the house and actually have it as a temporary residence. And, there's tax things we can talk about and stuff like that. But ultimately, the bottom line is think about the obscure and unusual as an opportunity, not as a threat. So when someone says you're not going to own anything and you're going to be happy, look at how you can be happy owning nothing and then do it on your terms. If someone says to you that you should be renting everything, consider where it might be appropriate or how can you create assets for other people to rent. And then when you have the opportunity to do something that might be adventurous and exciting for you, like my off-grid cabin and my goats, then give it a try. Set some boundaries, set a budget, give it a try, at least try to make it break even. And you will be shocked about how quickly you can convert your income into net worth and how many unusual and interesting opportunities there are. If you'd like to sit down and talk about your situation, if you'd like to sit down and get some ideas about what you can do to transform your income into wealth, or even to look at how to increase the velocity if you feel you're already on the right path, give us a call by visiting www.sustainablewealthsecrets.com. Go to the contact page, ask your questions at a minimum. There's no obligation to ask a question, and I'll either answer it in a podcast or I'll get back with you. But the bottom line is we've got a whole bunch of resources there. Some of them seem unusual, but I've gained this insight by interviewing high-income professionals, executives, multimillionaires, folks that have had unusual wealth, unusual situations, and it's formulaic these days. And it's so freeing and it's so exciting. And even if the economy is failing, even if groups are threatening to make you eat bugs, you're going to have a higher level of confidence because you can literally print out a report from your accounting system or look at a profit and loss and say, well, I've got X cash flow. And if inflation's going up, let's just increase the cash flow. We know where it's coming from. We know who we're serving. We know the opportunity and build on it from there. Folks, I'm Justin Hitt with Sustainable Wealth Secrets, and I've cataloged years and years of people's experiences, and I'm confident that somewhere in there we can find the key to your wealth, the key to your success. And so I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Again, I'm Justin Hitt, Sustainable Wealth Secrets.